I've done a lot of movies, and I remember them all, too. One of my first appearances in films was with Laurel and Hardy.
In 1969, Robert Mitchum arrived in Ireland driving a rare Porsche 911 Targa. Only 307 were ever made. He used it during the filming of Ryan's Daughter, then made it disappear. For 4 decades, no one knew where it went or why he hid it. When collectors finally tracked it down, they opened the trunk and found remnants of affairs with some of Hollywood's biggest names, proof of his darkest habits, and a piece of evidence from that 1948 arrest that was never supposed to survive. What was inside explained the man Hollywood never fully understood. Robert Mitchum was born, Robert Charles Derman Mitchum, on August 6, 1917, in Bridgeport, Connecticut. And, from the very start, his life carried weight. His mother was Anne Harriet Gunderson, a Norwegian immigrant trying to hold a family together. And his father was James Thomas Mitchum, a shipyard and railroad worker who did hard work for small pay. Then everything cracked open early. When Robert was just 2 years old, his father was killed in a rail yard accident, and in one hit, his mother became a widow with 3 children, and a budget that never stretched far enough. From that point, nothing felt settled. His mother took odd jobs and kept moving, always chasing the next small chance at stability, but the constant worry was still there in the house. Robert grew up in a working-class world where adults looked tired, and money disappeared fast. He carried the shock of losing his father, even though he was too young to fully understand it. Still, the absence shaped him. Later, he would talk about how his mother's constant stress and the family's tight finances pushed him toward independence, and also pushed him into distrust. When you grow up watching rules fail your family, you start questioning every rule that comes your way. So the moves kept coming. After his father's death, the family shifted between Bridgeport, New York, and Delaware, and later, there was a British stepfather in the mix too. Each new place was supposed to be a fresh start, but for Robert, it often felt like one more stop where he was expected to behave and stay quiet. He did not. He clashed with authority fast, and he clashed with his stepfather too. And that tension turned into a pattern that followed him from home to school and back again. By the time he was 12, his mother tried a different plan and sent him to live with his grandparents in Felton, Delaware, hoping the change would calm him down. Instead, the friction got worse. He fought the principal and got expelled from middle school. And it was not a small incident that was quickly forgotten. It became a sign of who he was becoming. Then the family landed in New York's Hell's Kitchen, and the trouble did not fade with the new address. Mitchum attended Harran High School, but within months he was expelled again after another fight. Now the story was not just about a kid acting out, it was about a boy slipping out of the normal path completely. Without steady school, without calm at home, he started drifting between relatives, and sometimes he drifted into the street. That cycle hardened him. Every expulsion made him feel even more separate from the world that kept telling him to obey. By his teenage years, he had stepped into the life of a drifter. He hopped freight trains across the United States and took whatever work he could find, not because it was a dream, but because it kept him alive. He did ditch digging. He picked fruit. He washed dishes. He boxed. The pay was low and the days were rough, but the point was freedom. He wanted to live outside the rules that had chased him out of school and out of peace. And because this was the Great Depression era, the roads were full of people like him, hungry and moving, learning how to survive one day at a time. Mitchum later said, "Those rail years taught him how to outsmart nature and society. And that is the kind of lesson that stays in your bones." Then came an episode that later got told as one of the wildest chapters in his early life. In the summer of 1933, when he was 14, he was arrested for vagrancy in Savannah, Georgia, and sentenced to a local chain gang at Chatham County Camp No. 1. There were claims that authorities tried to connect him to a shoe store robbery, and he insisted he was innocent, even pointing out he was already locked up when the crime supposedly happened. After just a few days, he reportedly escaped from the chain gang and ran even as gunfire rang out behind him, then hitchhiked back to Rising Sun, Delaware, where his family had moved. Whether you take every detail as clean fact or not, the impact is clear. The experience left him with a deep hatred of authority and the justice system, and it also taught him a harsh kind of street logic that would keep showing up in his life. There are stories that he later turned himself in for short stays just to get a meal and a bed, which says something about the kind of survival mindset he developed early. And even with all that roughness, he was not only fists and trouble. There was another side that surprised people. He wrote poetry as a child, and one of his poems was published in a local paper when he was 9 years old. So you had this strange mix living in the same body. A boy who could write, a boy who could fight, a boy who could vanish down the tracks and then come back with new bruises and new stories. He boxed semi-professionally too, with claims of earning $25 a match. And later he spent time in Roosevelt's Civilian Conservation Corps, doing hard work by day and boxing at night to blow off the pressure. That mix of poetry and brawling was not a phase. It was a clue to his personality. He wanted expression, but he also wanted escape. In 1933, his personal life took a turn that would shape the rest of his years. He met Dorothy Spence at a swimming hole near Camden, Delaware. He was 16 and she was 14. At the time, she was briefly dating his younger brother John, and that set up tension right away. But Robert was drawn to her, and the pull did not fade. They stayed serious, and in 1940, they married when Dorothy was 20. The family strain lingered, and John refused to attend the wedding, and some rifts lasted for years. Still, Dorothy stayed with Robert through his disappearances, scandals, and betrayals, and their marriage lasted 57 years, all the way until his death in 1997. It began young, it began messy, and it held anyway. By 1936, Mitchum followed his sister Julie to Long Beach, California, and the next shift came almost by accident. Julie was involved with the Players Guild, and Robert joined the group, first as a stagehand and then as an occasional bit player. He made his debut in August 1937, and it did something to him. The stage gave him a place where his restlessness could become something useful. He even wrote 2 children's plays for the Guild, and he contributed song lyrics and monologues for Julie's nightclub performances. It was not the neat story of a trained actor climbing a ladder. It was a drifter stumbling into a doorway and realizing he could belong there. Then World War II pushed him into another kind of grind. He worked as a machine operator at Lockheed Aircraft, doing exhausting shifts under constant noise and stress, and it tore him down. He suffered a nervous breakdown that caused temporary blindness, and doctors linked it to the pressure of factory work. That moment mattered because it forced a choice. He could not keep living in a job that was crushing his body and mind. So when he recovered, he returned to California and went back toward acting, not as a hobby anymore, but as a way forward. The film work started small, uncredited roles, studio lots, faces that passed through the frame and disappeared. He worked at RKO and other places, picking up whatever parts he could. In 1943, he got a bit part in the Hopalong Cassidy Western series, and that opened the door to more small roles in war films and Western programmers. His first credited named role is often given as Quinn in the 1943 Western Border Patrol, and even then he still had a long way to go. But the more he worked, the more his screen presence started to feel different. He did not push. He did not reach for attention. He just stood there, calm and heavy, and it read as real. Then 1945 changed the direction of his life. He played Lieutenant Bill Walker in the story of G.I. Joe, and the role brought him real attention and an Academy Award nomination for Best Supporting Actor. The film earned 4 Academy Award nominations, and his nomination remained his only Oscar nomination. The 18th Academy Awards took place in 1946, and he lost to James Dunn for A Tree Grows in Brooklyn. But the bigger truth was that Mitchum had arrived. The movie had a release date of July 13, 1945, and a runtime of 108 minutes. And after it hit, studios saw something they could sell. RKO signed him for more films, and the anonymous extra was suddenly a face people remembered. With that success came typecasting fast. RKO leaned into the world-weary tough guy image, placing him in westerns such as Nevada and West of the Pecos, and those films became his training ground. Nevada is often cited as his first starring role, with him playing a man on the run, wrongly accused of murder. West of the Pecos had him as Pecos Smith, more relaxed, more settled in the rhythm of the camera. These lower-budget westerns were not glamorous, but they taught him pacing, timing, and how to do more with less. And that became the key to his style. Because Mitchum's trademark was never loud. It was his sleepy, heavy-lidded eyes. It was the slouch that looked casual but felt controlled. It was the dry delivery that made it seem like he was not trying, even when he was. People called it lazy, but it was precision hiding behind ease. He once joked he had 3 expressions, looking left, right, or straight ahead. And he leaned into that idea, letting silence do work that other actors tried to force with speeches. He was tall, rugged, and calm, and the calm was the hook. That hook fit perfectly when film noir started rising. Mitchum moved into gritty crime dramas like Undercurrent in 1946, Crossfire in 1947, and Out of the Past in 1947, and it felt natural because his off-screen past already carried the same attitude. In Crossfire, he played a traumatized World War II veteran in a story that tackled anti-Semitism, and the tone matched the post-war mood. Then, Out of the Past locked his place in noir history. He played Jeff Bailey, a man trying to hide from his past, running a gas station in a quiet town, hoping quiet could save him. It could not. The past pulled him back through a crime boss and a femme fatale, Kathy Moffat, played by Jane Greer. The film moved through flashbacks and betrayal and doomed love, and Mitchum's performance stayed cool and fatalistic, without ever turning stiff. He gave the feeling of a man who understood the trap and still walked into it. The final stretch leaves him with no clean exit, and that is why the film lingers. As these roles hit, the public started blending the man with the characters, the drifter history, the fights, the brushes with trouble. All of it made his noir presence feel believable. He looked like someone who had lived through hard nights, not someone pretending. And then, real life gave the myth gasoline. On August 31, 1948, Mitchum was arrested in Los Angeles on marijuana charges after police raided a gathering where he was with actress Lila Leeds and others. The next day, September 1, 1948, police burst into a cottage at 8443 Ridpath Drive in Laurel Canyon and arrested Mitchum, Leeds, and 2 others. Reports describe it as the climax of an 8-month surveillance operation by the Los Angeles Police Narcotics Division, with claims the house had been watched closely. The press was there fast, and the story exploded into a full media spectacle. Headlines spread worldwide. Photos followed him in handcuffs, and the scandal became bigger than the details. The case went through the courts, and on January 11, 1949, he was found guilty after pleading no contest to criminal conspiracy to possess marijuana. On February 9, 1949, he was sentenced to 1 year in county jail, but most of it was suspended, and he was ordered to serve 60 days with 2 years of probation. He was released after about 47 to 50 days for good behavior, and he served time both in the county jail and at a prison farm near Castaic. Photos from that period became part of the legend. Mitchum in prison uniform, even milking a cow on the farm, turning punishment into a strange kind of publicity. Inside it, he was scared. He worried it would end his marriage to Dorothy and crush his career. At the time, he was separated from her, and the scandal felt like it could wipe out any chance of repair. Yet he also carried defiance, admitting he had smoked marijuana for years and acting as if he refused to beg for forgiveness. That mix of fear and bravado only made him more fascinating to the public, and the moral lesson the system seemed to want did not land the way they expected. Fan mail surged. The rebel image sold tickets. Instead of ending him, the scandal fed the persona that audiences already liked on screen. So the thread stays unbroken. The boy who lost his father at 2 grew into the kid who fought principles, then the teenager who rode freight trains, then the young man who stumbled into theater, then the worker who broke under factory pressure, then the actor who made silence powerful, then the star whose off-screen trouble turned into part of the brand. It is all connected. Each step pushes the next step forward. And when you look back at the whole run, the tough guy legend does not feel invented. It feels built, year by year, scar by scar, all the way from Bridgeport in 1917 to the screen image that never needed to shout to take over the room. In 1955, Robert Mitchum walked into one of the strangest dark stories Hollywood ever dared to film. He played Harry Powell in Charles Laughton's The Night of the Hunter, a preacher who smiles while he hunts. The character was inspired by a real serial killer named Harry Powers, and Mitchum made him feel even more real by turning his hands into a warning. Love on one set of knuckles, hate on the other. Then he used those hands as part of his sermon, not to comfort people, but to control them. The movie sits in Depression-era America, where money feels like a ghost everyone is chasing. Powell marries a widow, slips into her home, and then starts circling her children because he believes they know where $10,000 is hidden, money stolen by their late father. And Mitchum does not play the villain with loud anger. He plays him with patience. A low voice that sounds calm even when it is poisonous. A shadow that seems to arrive before the man. A stillness that makes every small movement feel dangerous. It is why people still talk about him as one of the most unforgettable villains ever put on screen. The weird part is, the world did not know what to do with the film at first. It flopped on release and confused audiences with its surreal fairy tale feeling. And the numbers were ugly. About $10,000 worldwide. That is the kind of figure that can make a studio look away. But time did what opening weekend could not. Decades passed. Critics and film lovers kept circling back, and the movie slowly turned into a masterpiece. And right in the middle of that reputation sits Mitchum, still cold, still smiling, still often called the most terrifying screen preacher in history. Then he did it again, in a different shape. In 1962, Mitchum became Max Cady in Cape Fear. And this time, the evil did not wear a preacher's collar. It wore the stare of a man who has waited years to punish someone. Cady is an ex-convict released after 8 years for rape, and he hunts lawyer Sam Bowden because he blames Bowden for his conviction. What makes it worse is how he chooses to attack, not only with threats, but with fear that seeps into the family. He terrorizes Bowden's wife and teenage daughter, kills their dog, and pushes the story into the era's boundaries with the constant suggestion of sexual violence. It is not just suspense. It is a slow tightening. Unlike The Night of the Hunter, Cape Fear hit the way studios dream about. It was a box office success, and critics praised the tension. And Mitchum's performance landed with a kind of chill that still sticks. The role became so iconic, it was remade twice. And the character stayed alive because Mitchum made him feel both dangerous and strangely charismatic. The kind of monster who knows how to charm a room before he ruins it. What made those villains hit harder was that Mitchum did not feel like a man pretending to be dangerous. A lot of people believed he carried that edge in real life too, and the stories fed the image. In 1948, he was arrested for marijuana possession with actress Lila Leeds during a midnight police raid that shocked Hollywood. He served a week in county jail and 43 days on a prison farm. And instead of destroying him, it sharpened his bad boy myth. He also had that older story hanging around him, the chain gang escape from his teenage years. And it kept getting repeated because it sounded like a movie plot. Add in the tales of brawls, drunken rampages, and the habit of throwing basketballs at photographers, and suddenly, audiences did not just see an actor. They saw a man who lived close to the edge, which made it easier to believe he could become Harry Powell or Max Cady if provoked. And yet, there was another side that surprised people who actually worked with him. Directors respected him because, when it mattered, he delivered. He rarely missed a day. He hit his marks. He could drop into a scene with relaxed humor and then flip into raw menace without warming up. Even the directors who had to deal with his tantrums still knew he would finish the job. He could explode, smash a studio office, threaten to throw a camera, and then show up and shoot the scene. He even joked about the basics of his craft, as if it was the simplest thing in the world. Show up on time, know my lines, hit my marks, and go home. People remembered him as unpredictable, but dependable. That mix is part of why his legend never fully settled into one clean shape. At home, the story was not clean either. He married Dorothy Spence in March 1940, and the marriage lasted until his death in 1997. That sounds steady when you say it fast, but it was not a smooth ride. He publicly claimed he never loved anyone but Dorothy, yet gossip and later accounts painted a private life filled with separations, arguments, and affairs. Names kept following him: Lucille Ball, Ava Gardner, Gene Simmons, Shirley MacLaine, Sarah Miles, and author Edna O'Brien. In 1962, he began a high-profile affair with MacLaine that lasted 2 years, with rumors of passionate trips to London, Paris, and West Africa. There were also claims of a 3-year romance with MacLaine's husband, though both denied it. Another relationship tied to his myth was Maila Nurmi, known as Vampira. And then there was the rumor of Rita Hayworth during the filming of Fire Down Below in Trinidad in 1957. Through it all, Dorothy stayed, even as family members later said she nearly walked out more than once. It left their relationship looking less like a fairy tale and more like a long, painful test of loyalty. The drinking stories made the outlaw image louder, and they were not just whispers. On the set of Rampage in 1963, there is the tale that he drank 49 glasses of rum and still insisted on filming a scene with a live tiger, horrifying the crew. His fights were also real enough to leave damage behind, including an incident where he reportedly hospitalized heavyweight boxer Bernie Reynolds. And the chaos did not stop when the cameras stopped. At a 1982 film premiere, an intoxicated Mitchum assaulted a female reporter and threw a basketball at a photographer, knocking out 2 of her teeth. That night turned into a $30 million lawsuit, and the fallout reportedly cost him his salary from the film. The pattern was always the same: charm, boredom, alcohol, then a spark that became a fire. On sets, the explosions could get even bigger. In 1955, while filming Blood Alley, he clashed with director William Wellman, and the fight grew so wild he trashed the studio office, smashing furniture, breaking windows, and even ripping a door off its hinges. People said security needed nearly 20 minutes to get control of the situation. That same year, during the Night of the Hunter, an argument with Charles Laughton escalated until Mitchum threatened to throw a heavy camera at him, and it took 5 crew members to hold him back. Years later, on the Yakuza in 1974, he got into a fistfight with a Japanese extra over a misunderstanding involving a prop sword, and the man lost 2 teeth. These were not tiny incidents. They were the kind that could stop a production and make everyone on set feel the air change. Still, underneath the noise, there were signs of a man fighting himself. The tough exterior hid depression, self-doubt, and exhaustion, especially during demanding work such as Ryan's Daughter in 1970, when the pressure pushed him toward collapse. In 1984, after years of heavy drinking and emotional turmoil, he checked into the Betty Ford Center for alcoholism treatment. It was a rare public admission for someone so private. People who knew him talked about periods of isolation, emotional outbursts, and a growing melancholy as he aged. And that old chain gang trauma did not leave him either. It sat under the jokes and the swagger, like a bruise he never stopped touching. That rebellious streak had roots that went back far. His father died in a train accident when Mitchum was 2, and after that, he was passed between relatives, learning early how it feels to be unwanted in small, quiet ways. By 14, he was expelled from high school after fighting his principal. Then the drift began. Freight trains, odd jobs, sleeping wherever he could. In 1933, when he was 15, he was arrested for aviled up for vagrancy in Savannah, Georgia. And the story ties him to a brutal chain gang called Chatham County Camp No. 1. The conditions were described as horrific, with disease and violence always close. He wore leg irons until his leg became infected, and then he escaped during a road detail, zigzagging through the woods while gunfire followed behind him. He made his way to Baltimore, stole clothes, and kept moving. Later, he even turned himself in at times just to get a bed and a meal, a small act of clever rebellion that showed how deeply he distrusted authority. That life built the outsider inside him, the loner who never quite believed in rules, which is why his anti-heroes never felt fake. When Hollywood changed, he changed with it. As the studio system crumbled through the 1960s and 1970s, Mitchum did not disappear. He adjusted. He landed in big projects and proved he could still carry weight. The Longest Day in 1962 had an all-star cast and earned $32 million globally. El Dorado in 1966 was a major box office hit that grossed over $4 million. Ryan's Daughter in 1970 brought him an Oscar nomination, and The Friends of Eddie Coyle in 1973 later became known as one of the decade's best crime dramas. He even showed lighter range in The Good Guys and the Bad Guys in 1969. The roles shifted, but the core stayed the same. Hard-edged patriarchs, morally messy loners, men who looked like they had lived through things they never explained. Then, in 1991, he stepped back into the world that helped define him. Martin Scorsese's Cape Fear remake gave Mitchum a cameo as Lieutenant Elgart, and it worked as a quiet nod to the terror he created in 1962. Gregory Peck returned too, and Robert De Niro took on the new Max Cady. The remake earned $179 million worldwide, and it was dedicated to the memory of J. Lee Thompson, the director of the original. Mitchum did not need much screen time. His presence alone reminded people where this fear came from. In the 1980s, he also found a whole new audience on television. He became Captain Victor "Pug" Henry in The Winds of War in 1983, and then returned in War and Remembrance in 1988. These were not small projects. The Winds of War cost $26 million and was watched by over 140 million people in its first week. Mitchum played the central patriarch with quiet authority, even though he was older than the character, and viewers accepted him because he carried a kind of lived-in gravity. It made him feel less like a fading movie star and more like a man who could anchor an epic. Even his style aged in a way that felt consistent. He never chased trends. He did not try to act younger. The half-amused, half-world-weary vibe stayed. Drifters, soldiers, detectives, outsiders. The characters kept carrying their past, and Mitchum did too. That sameness became a strength because audiences trusted it. His presence could lend credibility to almost anything he touched. And then there is that image people still pass around because it looks too perfect to be staged. In 1969, he took delivery of a Porsche 911 Targa in Stuttgart, Germany, then drove it across Europe and arrived in Ireland, where he was set to film Ryan's daughter. The car itself became part of the myth. A 1969 Porsche 911 Targa, with only 307 built for the German market that year, and a 170 horsepower engine that felt like a statement on its own. Photos from that era show him leaning on the car, cigarette in hand, looking exactly like the legend people wanted him to be. Not just a star, but a man whose real-life adventures could compete with his screen roles. Even the 1948 arrest turned into a legend with extra layers. On August 31, 1948, police raided a house in Los Angeles and arrested him for smoking marijuana with Lila Leeds and others. Reporters swarmed the scene, and Mitchum stayed defiant, saying he had been smoking for years. He was sentenced to 60 days, and later accounts said the whole thing was pushed as part of a larger anti-drug campaign and that he was eventually exonerated. But by then, it did not matter. The story had already locked itself into his public image, and Hollywood kept retelling it until it sounded bigger than life. In the end, the body could not keep up with the myth. Robert Mitchum died on July 1, 1997, at 79, from complications of lung cancer and emphysema. He had smoked and drank for decades, almost stubbornly, even when health warnings piled up. By then, he had acted in over 100 films and countless television projects across 6 decades. He narrated Tombstone in 1993, and his final acting role came in James Dean, Race with Destiny, in 1997. What he left behind was not just a list of credits. It was a feeling, that relaxed voice with danger underneath, that look that said he had already seen the worst and would not pretend otherwise. And that is why modern actors still bring up his name when they talk about how to play a tough man without forcing it.